the clientele, the atmosphere, the tension, the danger element on a whole nother level. They basically have nothing to lose.
Welcome back, everybody. Career Insights. I'm going to start this one a little bit different today because some of you might recall that I was a public defender, and the guest that I have today is related to what I used to do. And I have the story I want to tell about this client that I had one time when I was a public defender down in Cochise County. And I don't remember the specifics of like what the conversation was. It was something about him had been in prison before, and something about how he was like hanging out with people. And I asked him a question, and I remember very vividly him saying, "I don't sit with those people." And I didn't really realize what that meant. I mean, I knew what it meant at that time because I had seen movies and stuff like that, but I didn't really understand. And I remember him explaining that to me. But today I have Mike here, and he's a retired Department of Corrections officer for 30 years?
28
years.
30 altogether working corrections, yes.
And I will never forget having that conversation with that guy and his response, because it's you see it a lot in movies. You know what I mean? You see it a lot in movies, I mean, maybe not so much Escape from Alcatraz, but,
right.
Blood In, Blood Out, like American Me, and things like that, So did you ever watch those movies?
Oh, yeah. I tend to have an interest in prison-related, corrections-type related movies. And it's interesting because his response to you is not something that you would encounter in normal society.
Yeah.
But I've always equated prison to being a little small subculture, a replication of what society is, but smaller.
Interesting.
But in a confined area with some of the worst element, all behind bars or behind fences.
Yeah.
So the rules and the applications and the behavior tend to not mimic what we would consider to be normal.
So let's go back before we get into all this. Like, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in California, spent about 44 years living in California, and went to elementary, junior high, high school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do when I think I did like a year of college. And then I ended up just getting a job working in a lumber yard and just a paycheck kind of a thing. And then one day my dad had a newspaper clipping for hiring, and it was working for the municipal and superior court as a security guard. And he said, "Son, this job will get you out of the hot heat. It gets you indoors. It's security. It pays more, and it's working for the county." So I got that. And while I was doing that, the county had inmates, prisoners that would come in and empty the trash or mop the floors or do general cleaning. So I started to get a little familiarity around prisoners and inmates.
How old are you at this time?
I was in my early 20s doing that. So I was basically working security. An inmate detail would come in. So I kind of said, that's interesting. And same thing, as I did that for about a year and a half, 2 years. My dad said, "Hey, you're already working for the county. You have your foot in the door. They're hiring for the Kern County Sheriff Department for correctional officers." And I said, "Well, how much different is that?" He says, "Well, you're already supervising inmates.
Yeah.
But this would be on a greater scale and more money." So I went and I applied, and I ended up hiring on with the Kern County Sheriff Department. At the time, they were using deputies, sheriff deputies inside the jails, and they wanted to get the deputies on the street, patrolling, actually responding to calls. And so I was a part of the very first Correctional Officer Academy.
Wow.
Which got introduced to replace the deputies, and it was put on by the California State Department of Corrections. They had an academy. So I was working corrections in the county jail there. And after doing that for a couple of years, through word of mouth, same way I got the other job, someone said, "Well, the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons
Wow.
is hiring. So I actually have never worked for the Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections is always going to mean a state. Like you'll have the Arizona State Department of Corrections.
Sure.
You'll have the California State Department of Corrections. Typically, you'll have a city jail, a county jail, a state facility, or nationally, you'll have the Bureau of Prisons. So I worked for a couple of years at a county jail and then transferred over or applied as a new hire with the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons. So it's not really DOC. Anytime you hear Department of Corrections, it's always going to mean a state.
Okay.
So it'll be like Arizona or California or whatever that state might be.
Well, that's interesting. See, I learned something.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but yeah, that makes total sense.
DOC is always a state.
Awesome.
And BOP, of course, is Bureau of Prisons. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door. Never really grew up thinking, I don't think anybody grows up thinking to themselves, I want to work in a prison. I want to be a CO. That just never happens. I was just looking for a career path. I was looking for more money. I was looking for stability. I was looking for, something different, that paid more and offered me, greater opportunities.
So Kern County was where you started.
Kern County, which is in Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
And it was just a county jail, which is different than, I'm sure you've heard of LA County jails and you've heard horror stories. So
Sure.
It was just a county jail. So you're going to get a different type of inmate compared to what you would find in the state facility or what you would find in a federal facility.
So in the Kern County, they had a county jail there.
Yes.
And you're a officer there supervising the people that were in the county jail. Would that be right to say?
Yeah. So basically people that committed offenses within Bakersfield, the surrounding county, doing short sentences relatively. You never really see people there for an extended period of time because it's based on the severity of the crime.
Sure.
And your criminal history. So if it was a serious crime or you had stacked on criminal history, you would probably go to a state facility. The courts would say, okay, you're not going to spend 6 months in a county jail for drunk driving or possession of some sort of minor offense. We're going to send you to a more serious institution with a higher level of custody. So that's kind of how I got my feet wet was through the Kern County jail system in California.
Yeah, and just so people know that are watching or listening, it's like in the county jail, that's kind of like where you get held while you're waiting your trial or whatever hearings you got going on in your case, whatever case, if you didn't make like bail or something like that.
Yeah, well, a lot of time they'll have what they call a pretrial facility, but you can actually go before a judge and be sentenced to a year and a half, 2 years, whatever the case may be, in a county jail, and you will serve your entire time there.
Okay.
So they will, prosecute you, and you'll go before a judgment, and then you'll be sentenced, and you'll do your time at a county jail from start to finish. Depending on, what you did.
How long did you work in Kern County for the jail there?
I was probably there. I want to say a little under 3 years. I think it was about 2 years and 8 months I did that. And I did different jobs because with every institution or facility, you can do different things. I was a correctional officer for the most part, and then I transferred you can transfer into different areas, which in turn will give you like Monday through Friday, weekends and holidays. So I transferred into the laundry facility because every jail, whether it be city, county, state, or federal, it's like Las Vegas. It's open 24/7, never closes. There has to be somebody there. The lights are on.
Yeah.
And so there's different jobs that you can kind of, once you get in, you can be like, well, how do I get a Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4? So based on your qualifications and your application, you put in for a different job and say, I'm going to go work in the laundry because the laundry's not open on the weekends. It's only a Monday through Friday gig. So then you get a job in there and you're basically supervising a work detail. Inmates are turning in dirty, soiled linen and clothes, and the inmate work detail is washing them and drying them and separating them and sorting them, and you're just there throughout the day supervising them to make sure that the work gets done. And it's like a little bit of a perk for the officer, because now you're not in a housing unit and you're not working midnight to 8 or 4 to midnight or something that you may not want. Although they do give you monetary incentives for working a less than desirable position. So if you work 4 to midnight, you might get a better pay. If you have to work on a Sunday, you might get a better pay. But if you just want Monday through Friday, you can kind of navigate the system, which is what I did there towards the end of my 3 years, almost 3 years.
What did you think of your time at Kern County, at the county jail?
It was interesting. It was kind of a little bit eye-opening because, like I say, you get society's worst element for the most part, and they're not all really there to be rehabilitated. So a lot of them are continuing to commit, questionable criminal-like behavior. They're just there because they got caught. They're not there because they chose to be. So it gives you a little insight on society and people. But overall, I looked at it as an opportunity to get out of a job type situation where I was just, like I said, driving a forklift and loading lumber, and basically there was no perk or light at the end of the tunnel. I was just working, and I wanted something that had mobility and chances for advancement.
Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. Like, there are some jobs where it's like
kind of a dead end,
Well, I mean, you could do it forever.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on where you're at in life. Like, there's people that are retired that work at Walmart, and they're happy because they're like, I don't care. I'm just getting a few bucks and I'm getting out of the house, kind of thing. So,
you said earlier that somebody had mentioned something to you about the federal system. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of times it's word of mouth. Like, I was content working at the lumber yard, and my dad mentioned the security job, and then while I was there, he had mentioned the county job. And then one of my coworkers said, hey, they're hiring for COs, correctional officers, in Lompoc, California. And I'm like, where is that? And he says, well, it's Santa Barbara County. It's right by the beach. It's a cool little beach town, Central Coast. And he said, it's doing what we're doing now. He said, but they pay more, and there's more opportunity and better benefits. And I was like, all right, cool. So I put in for it. And so basically, I went from the Central Valley, which would have been Bakersfield, that area, to the Central Coast, which was Lompoc, which is near the ocean, and they had a facility there. At the time, it was the only United States penitentiary on the West Coast.
Wow.
So I didn't really know what I was getting into at that point, going from a county facility. It was just, for me as a young man, it was like, oh, more money. I was I was 27. So
everybody,
it was at that age. I was 27, so I was like, hey, I'm single, and then the beach, the coast, so I'm like, sure, sounds good,
So how big was the jail at Kern County?
Well, a county jail, like most jails, you can have a complex to where you might have the downtown city where you get locked up for a DUI, and the police, law enforcement bring you downtown, and you're in a jail cell. And then you might have what they call, I think it was called Lerdo, which was a minimum. It was kind of like a barracks, so it almost looked like you had a huge open yard with several barracks type facilities all around it, and so it was a fairly large county facility with bunk beds, and and then you had, of course, a kitchen area and a laundry area and different things like that. So it was a fairly good size, but nothing in comparison to a penitentiary. You get to a penitentiary, and you've got gun towers that soar over the top. You've got 3 or 4 very high fences with Israeli wire, razor wire, less than lethal wire, and it's pretty ominous. And you've got the buildings that are in the wings that are built out of concrete and stone, and everything is tall and gray and dark, and it looks like a fortress. So when you pull up to that, it's quite ominous, because it's not like a little minimum county jail with barracks. This is an actual large structure with very tall fences.
So would it be safe to say that it was a very big difference between the Kern County Jail and this penitentiary that you're now going to in Lompoc?
Oh yeah, quite a bit, because the level of custody. I mean, now you have people that are doing multiple life sentences. They're never getting out.
Wow.
And the type of inmate that you have there, significantly more serious offense. And the clientele, the atmosphere, the tension, the danger element on a whole nother level. They basically have nothing to lose, you know.
So it's interesting. I didn't really think about this until now. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure there's a little bit of that dynamic, like I don't sit with those people in
Right.
county jails, but it's probably, I would imagine, and you would know that it's at a completely different level at the penitentiary level.
Yeah, depending on the level of the institution, who you're housed with, it can be a very racial thing, to where you could be on really friendly terms with somebody, but you can't have them as a cellmate. I was at a prison in United States Penitentiary, McCrary, Kentucky. I was a counselor, and one of my duties was to assign inmates their cell, housing assignments. And I thought that I could just put, blacks with blacks. But at the time, there were some blacks that were referred to as DC blacks that came out of Washington, DC,
Oh,
and they
wow.
were totally different.
Wow.
And the non-DC black didn't want to be housed with that person.
Wow.
I could run into people that were on the main floor of the unit, and they might be playing cards, or they might be watching TV together, but they were not to be housed together, because if the whites ran with the whites and the blacks ran with the blacks and the Hispanics and so forth and so on, it didn't mean that it was okay to have them as a cellmate. And it didn't mean that it was okay to have them sit with you while you were eating. There were separate places to exercise and work out,
Wow.
separate places to eat, separate places to navigate in the TV room, certain days certain times that one race would have this time scheduled for watching their shows. The whites would have another one. The Asians might have another one. And you couldn't really mix them because you were always being watched by the general population. So you could end up in a serious amount of trouble.
Wow.
Just by associating with the wrong person at the wrong time, even though, you may have known him as a friend.
Do you mean like you as a correctional officer?
No,
or?
the inmate
Got
population. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They, when I say they, it's like the inmate population, because there were so many different, just to give you an example, when you asked me, about the seriousness of, noticing the change, just to give you an example, when I arrived at the penitentiary, unlike a county facility where you're going to have, a guy that got a DUI or speeding tickets, or maybe a minor domestic issue, something that wouldn't warrant a greater offense. When you get to a penitentiary like I did, I became, it was brought to my attention because within a very short span of time, you needed to be able to identify. We would have Aryan Brotherhood. We would have Mexican Mafia. We would have the Black Guerrilla Family, groups called the Dirty White Boys, Texas Syndicate, a Hispanic gang called the Nuestra Familia.
Yeah.
We had Bloods, Crips, Jamaican Posse, Guamanian gangs, and then of course we had motorcycle gangs. So you had Hells Angels, Mongols, Bandidos, Outlaws. Then you had the Italian factions. We had the Genovese family, the Gambinos, Bonanno, Colombo, Lucchese. You had Colombian drug lords. You had the Yakuza, which is the equivalent of the Japanese mafia, Nazi lowriders. You've heard of Gangster Disciples, MS-13, which they currently are sending back to El Salvador under the, they call themselves Mara Salvatrucha. Native Americans, terrorists.
Wow.
So you get all of these people who otherwise wouldn't have anything to do with one another. Now they're all behind bars together. And to give you an example, like with the motorcycle gangs, typically on the streets, you would have a feud, say, between the Hells Angels and the Mongols.
Sure.
They call a truce when they get behind bars. And they're like, you know what? We're predominantly white.
Interesting.
We're all part of motorcycle gang legacy.
Yeah.
We're going to run with the whites and we're going to call a truce.
Wow.
You know, and then some of the dynamics are kind of odd because the Aryan Brotherhood, if it was a large-scale race war, they would team up with the Mexican Mafia. The black groups, like the Black Guerrilla family, they would team up with a northern Hispanic group called the Nuestra Familia. So you had to know, they call it cars. If you were in a group or a set, they would ask you, what car do you run with, meaning who do you run with? Like if you were to get locked up, they would assume that you were white, but they would approach you and they would want to know what your heritage was.
Wow.
They would want to know what your nationality, who you run with, how you identify. But more importantly, they would want to know why you were locked up. And you would have to prove that relatively quickly for your own safety.
See, this is like really interesting because I kind of have a little bit of insight into this being a public defender. You know what I mean? Because so like the big thing that like, a lot of people might hear is like sex offenders or chomos, right?
Yes.
So is that why they're...
And for people that don't know, the word chomo is an abbreviation of child molester. So they call them chomo. There's other things that they've called them, basically pedophiles. I've heard them be called chicken hawk. There's a lot of different things. But if you're in prison, if you're a child molester, you're of the low of the low.
Yeah.
If you're a rat or a snitch or an informant, you're pretty low. If you're ex-law enforcement, you're not very popular. And depending on who controls the yard, that will determine also whether or not you're welcome or not, or you have to leave. So to answer your question, it was pretty much a culture shock, because you have, like I mentioned, all these different people that I just mentioned, and they're all brought together, and they're told you're going to cohabitate here, and you're going to live amongst each other cohesively, and you're going to try to get along. Normally, you wouldn't have anything to do with one another on the streets, but now we're going to push you all in here, lock you up. You're going to sell with somebody, and when the door is closed, you're going to be in the general housing unit, and we expect you to follow the rules and regulations.
I had never really thought of it. I mean, you're aware of it, that all of the different like gangs and stuff are all housed together. But when you went through that list, that was
just a small part. I just took a few notes. What I read off there was just a little touch of what's actually back behind there.
And as you were like saying that, I was thinking, out in the regular world, they would never be commingling with, or
not
like
at all,
ever.
Not at all. Yeah.
And now it's like a forced situation where they're all together now.
Yeah. For example, there was a blood member, went by the name of Zulu, and they would play flag football in the yard against the Crips, and they would always lose. And I would always give them a hard time, like, why are the Crips always? And he said, well, because at that facility, they outnumbered them. There was way more Crips than there were Bloods, so they had a deeper bench, more to choose from. But at the same time, same time, they called a truce, and they're like, we're going to, which is kind of dangerous if you think about it, Bloods and Crips playing football. Yeah. But there's always that situation where who has the highest number in population, who has the strength here, who's going to run the drugs, who's going to run, so there has to be the shot callers. I'm sure you've seen those movies. Sure. There has to be that shot caller who can identify with the other shot callers, and they have to be able to determine who's running what and how is the yard and the institution going to be dealt with.
So does each like gang or, race have like their shot caller? And like, let everybody know, like, what is a shot caller when we're talking about?
Well, yeah, basically in the hierarchy of prison gangs, like with the Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia, they almost try to parallel military. So they'll have their head people. They'll have some that are in charge in the prison. They'll have some that are in charge on the streets. But they'll literally have generals, and they'll have lieutenants, and they'll have captains, and they'll have sergeant of arms, and they'll have treasurers. They'll have all these different little titles, people that collect the money, people that determine punishment, people that decide who's going to get hit, who's not going to get hit. And that can vary. And sometimes people are moved in, people are moved out. There was a time when I worked at the penitentiary in Lompoc, California, where the head of the Aryan Brotherhood and the head of the Mexican Mafia were both in special housing because they were both addicted on heroin.
Oh, wow.
And they were junkies. You don't want to have the number one person of your group or your faction being an addict.
Sure.
Because they make stupid decisions.
Yeah.
It's volatile. So I remember one morning they shipped them both out. So there could be the younger group coming up. There could be a lot of nepotism. There could be a lot of family. You could have somebody who come in off the streets and says, hey, I'm a higher rank. I'm taking over. This is my yard now. A variety of different things that can change the complexion, or a major event can take place where you might have a riot.
Yeah.
Or a big fight, and the institution will say, okay, we're moving these 20 guys out and we're moving those 30 guys out. We're done with these knuckleheads. We're moving them someplace else. And then you get a new group of knuckleheads, and then they have to establish, who's running what, basically.
I've used that term a lot. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
So I want to go back real quick, because when you said when somebody new shows up, they want to know what you're in there for. And are they doing that because they want to, like, hey, you're a snitch, or hey, you're a chomo, or?
Well, there's power in numbers. So when you get there, they first want to make sure, okay, is this somebody who we can bring into our car, into our group, and we can add as another soldier, another whatever. So we need to find out what this guy is all about. What, is he going to be part of us? Is he going to be an asset, or is he going to be a deficit? But also, if he's a white guy and he's a child molester, or he's a rat or a snitch, a lot of times you come in with your paperwork, your predisposition, your judgment and commitment.
Yeah.
And it pretty much says what you were accused of, what you were charged for, what you were found guilty of.
Okay.
And it pretty much is your criminal history and why you're there.
Okay.
And they're going to want to look at it to determine whether or not, hey, this guy's got to leave. This guy can't stay on this yard. And they'll put your name out to other institutions, and your name will go out across the United States. Hey, we just got this guy, Eric, so-and-so. What do you know about this guy? Is he a squirrel? He says he knows this guy and that guy. And sometimes inmates will show up with photographs and say, look, I was with, all these guys, right? Look at this photo. Look at that photo.
This is insane.
And they'll pick up a phone and they'll say, hey, Eric just hit the yard, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, that guy's a piece of, you don't want this guy.
Wow.
He's got to get off the yard. Or they'll say, yeah, you know what? He's solid. He's put in his work. He's put in his time.
And these are the inmates.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that information gets found out very quickly.
Wow.
Very quickly. It's a network. They'll know who you are before you're even ready to disclose who you are. They'll have a pretty good idea.
I mean, this is like, these things go on, but to hear it from you, like having been there.
Oh yeah.
And this is like, it's incredible that there's this network.
Yeah, because like I said, altogether over 30 years, 28 years with the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons, but 3 years working in the county jail and whatnot, and working in different facilities. So just to kind of back up a little bit to kind of give you an idea, I started in from 87 to 89 working the Kern County Sheriff Department County Jail.
Okay,
but December of 89, I started off at the United States Penitentiary in Lompoc, California. Was there for about a decade or so. And then I opened up the institution, and it's called United States Penitentiary, Atwater, California.
Okay.
And then I left California, and I opened up the United States Penitentiary, they called it an activation, in McCrary, which is in Kentucky. And after going to that institution, I came back to California at the Federal Correctional Institution in Hurlong, California, finished out my career at the Federal Correctional Complex here in Tucson. So over 30 years, I started at 27 and I retired at 55. So about 7 years and a few months, I've been retired. And that's kind of where my career took me. And some of the different jobs that I had, of course, I was a correctional officer. I was what you call a material handler supervisor, working in the warehouse and things like that. I was a Unicore factory foreman, which is I can explain that a little bit more. I worked in the commissary, and then I was also a counselor. So these were some of the different jobs that you can navigate through within the Bureau of Prisons should you decide that you want to go one way or another.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because that's interesting. Because I've always just had this impression that if you're working for the Department of Corrections, you're going to be
not the Department of Corrections
or the Bureau of Prisons.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That you're going to that everybody's kind of like walking inmates through, and hey, you're going to go in your cell, and but there's a lot of other things.
Yeah, generally speaking, depending on your background, when you get hired on, you're going to start as a correctional officer, and they always say everyone at the end of the day is a correctional officer.
Okay.
And as you get your foot in the door and you put in a little bit of time, you can start to look around you and see what other opportunities are out there that you might want to try for yourself based on your interest, your experience, your desire. You can put in for other positions, not only within that facility, but across the United States. And that's the distinction I'd like to make, where if you're working for the Department of Corrections, whether it be Arizona or California, you're limited to that state. So if you're working, say, the Department of Corrections in California, you can go up and down California. You can go to San Quentin. You can go to Folsom. You can go to Pelican Bay. But you have to stay within the state of California. When you're working for the Department of Justice Federal Bureau of Prisons, we have institutions in Puerto Rico. We have institutions in Hawaii. We have institutions in New York, California. You can go all over the United States, put in for a position, and you're not limited to the state. So that's one of the big distinctions there between the state and the federal system.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I'm glad that you made that distinction.
Yeah.
So when we're talking Department of Corrections, we're within a state. And when we're talking Federal Bureau of Prisons, now there's a network of these
the nation
everywhere across the United States and possibly in other countries,
right,
where we might have a facility. So that's really huge for anybody that's interested in this field. Now, for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, what are the requirements to become an officer?
Okay, so basically, for myself, I only had a year of college, and I had some supervision because I had worked in the county jail for about almost 3 years. But generally speaking, just to give you a little bit of some of the insight. So for the Bureau of Prisons, you're going to need to be a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
They won't hire you if you're over 37.
Interesting.
So what's interesting is 37 is the stop age. You have to be under 37. And also it's mandatory retirement at 57, which a lot of people think, isn't that age discrimination? But they have their reasons for doing that. So they won't hire you over 37. They'll mandatory you out at 57.
Okay.
So you have to be a U.S. citizen. You undergo an extensive background investigation. And by that, they want to make sure that you don't have a lot of financial problems. You don't have...
Oh, wow.
They're basically looking for everything because they don't want you getting in there behind bars as an officer and then finding out later that you have some serious debt and you could be easily compromised because someone's going to come up to you and say, hey, Eric, man, if you can get me a cell phone, I'll have money dropped off at a P.O. box, you name it. And you're like, man, I am in a lot of debt. And I do have a lot of financial problems. For a lot of different reasons. So U.S. citizen, below 37, an extensive background investigation. You go through a physical examination, a medical examination, some psych work is done. And then depending on what you're putting in for, a more advanced type position, you might get a bachelor's degree depending on if you want to advance more. And they'll look at sociology, correctional administration, behavioral sciences, criminal justice. They're focusing on interpersonal skills, organizational awareness, stress tolerance, communication. So for an entry-level correctional officer, it doesn't require a whole lot.
Okay.
But if you want to maybe be a case manager or a unit manager or something further down the line, and you have a degree, that'll help your mobility quicker as far as your advancement potentials. And so that's that's part of what it would take to kind of get your foot into the door. And I mention now so I don't forget also, anyone that was be interested, you can go to a website called bop.gov, which is bureauprisons.gov. And that explains in more detail the hiring process and the application process and what it would take to navigate getting into the Bureau of Prisons.
Okay.
And then, and then I might as well transition. If you do get selected, you end up, it's mandatory. You go to, it's called FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Facility or Training Center. It's in Glencoe, Georgia. It's a 3-week academy, and they basically teach introduction to correctional techniques, 80 hours of institution familiarization. You'll be there for 3 weeks. You'll go over firearms, self-defense, written academics, BOP policies and procedures, physical abilities, and upon doing that, you'll be assigned to a facility of which you'll be for 2 to 3 weeks, not under the supervision, but you'll be kind of shadowing an experienced employee.
Okay.
And so you have to go to this academy. It's near Brunswick in Georgia, and you have to go through this whole process. They want you to succeed. They want you to pass. They've invested a lot of time and effort and energy and money in you at this point.
Yeah.
So you really have to be a screw up to not make it out of the. I mean, people do fail, but it's meant for you to succeed. And from the academy, then you'll get placed depending on the Bureau of Prisons needs, or where, if you're lucky, the institution that you actually applied at.
In the federal system, is it a GS position are the GS positions?
Yeah, you can go GS. They also have in some of the warehouse and Unicor. They also have WS grade, but they do have GS grade, WS grade. So there are different grades of pay. And from when I started, you could be anywhere from $30,000 a year to well over $100,000.
Wow.
You know, some of the executive assistants to the warden, associate warden, they'll make well over $100,000 easily. Easily. And a lot of people with overtime that have put in a lot of work, I've seen them make significant money by just advancing and being willing to be mobile and being willing to go to different institutions.
So that first facility that you went to, how was that time there? Like, was it intimidating when you showed up? Like, because this is a completely different environment than Kern County Jail. It
was pretty intimidating because it was during the time shortly thereafter. I don't know if you remember, during the Carter administration, where they had what they call the Mario Cubans, the Mario Cubanos, and Fidel Castro pretty much opened up all his prisons and all his insane asylums.
Oh, wow.
And released them, and they all came to the United States. And they went to a few prisons like Atlanta and some other ones, and they rioted and they burned facilities and they created millions of dollars worth of destruction. They assaulted officers. Well, shortly after the time I got to Lompoc Penitentiary, a lot of those inmates came to that facility.
Wow.
And because I spoke a little bit of Spanish, I was assigned as the officer in charge of the Cuban unit, which were the Mario Cubanos.
Oh, man.
So getting to that facility with, a lot of the gangs that I had mentioned and a lot of the tension, and realizing that there were stabbings and there were beatings and there were rapes and there were assaults and, all the horrible things that you hear about occurring with frequency and regularity in a penitentiary, because you're in a level 5-6 penitentiary, which is different. And to kind of give you the difference, because I'm mentioning the penitentiary. So, and give you a little background. So the Bureau of Prisons was established in 1930. So right now there's about 157,000 inmates.
Wow.
And we have they have about 37,000 employees, and there's about 122 prisons nationwide. And those prisons consist of prison camps, correctional institutions, United States penitentiaries, ADX, which are administrative maximum security, detention centers, medical centers. But basically it goes medium, low, minimum, low, medium, high, and administrative segregation. And with that, the level of seriousness and the level of danger and the stress that you can feel, you can cut it with a knife when you're there, because they have what they call body alarms or emergency responses. And you'll basically get an all call over the radio. Every officer will have your keys. You'll have a radio to communicate with. If you're in the unit, you can communicate either on the computer, the radio, and then you have what they call a body alarm. And the body alarm is simply a button that you push, meaning all hell's breaking loose.
Wow.
I need help. Send the cavalry.
Wow.
So I've had to respond to that many times, where I've run into a unit and somebody had just been stabbed 35, 40 times.
Holy cow.
Not to be too graphic, but if you remember the movie Carrie, where they poured the pig blood over her during the prom or whatever it was, I literally responded to an incident where a guy, I believe he was a Native American, but he was alleged to have been a child molester. And they got to him and stabbed him 35, 40 times. And when I arrived, he was just covered from the top of his head down to his feet, dripping with blood. He actually survived because they didn't get any vital organs.
Oof.
But to run into that and to see that and to start, you don't become numb to it and you don't become complacent. But as the years go by with regularity and you start to see that, and it's not anybody that you have any affinity or it's not a friend or a family member. It's just one of them. You know, it's either us or them. And our mantra is we go home every day.
Sure.
You know, when we leave this place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, it was kind of a shell shock, you know, going into a place like that and then starting to see these events occur.
How quick were they on that Native American guy that they stabbed 35, 40, you know, because they thought he was a chomo. So how long did it, you know, was this like weeks?
A lot of times it's not spontaneous. So a lot of times it's orchestrated. They'll do it in between a count, in between a movement. They'll do it when they know officers are distracted or busy. They'll do it when they know they have the numbers. They'll do it when they know that that's the changing of the guard. So if you're working an 8 to 4, 4 to midnight, and they know that, okay, Eric is grabbing his lunch, he's picking his sunglasses, he's grabbing his stuff, he's ready to go out the door. He's standing out front and he's waiting for his relief. Relief is going to show up, have a good day. You're going to leave, that guy's going to show up. So they might do it right then because they know no one's really watching.
Wow.
And they know that by the time the officer realizes, oh, something's bad's going down right here. By the time I make that call, it's got to go to the control center. They got to be like, oh, where's this at? J unit? Okay. Control to all available radio listening units. We have a body alarm emergency J unit. And then you have to hear it. And now you have to run like hell. And it might be clear at the other end of the institution by the time you get there. So it's not if you're in trouble, as an officer, you have to understand that you may be in a position to where you better be able to control the situation and get by, because just because you said, I need help, it's going to be a bit before someone gets to you.
Yeah.
So if you're rolling around tussling and someone's on you, you know, you're on your own until the cavalry arrives. It seems like an eternity.
Is there anything like, so let's say it's like a low secure or low.
You have low, minimum, medium.
So let's say low, medium, and high. Is there some type of like, I'm trying to think of what the right word is. So let's say that like on a low, there's like an officer for every 50, but at a medium, it would be one for every, 20 or something like that. You know, is there something like that in, you know what I mean? Like, can you talk about that?
It's not only the amount of staff that are designated, but you might have, like later in my career, you might have more cameras.
Oh, okay.
You might have more security, so that the ratio of staff member to inmate is such that, okay, there might be fewer of us and more of them, but it's in a different type of a situation. Instead of being in a standard cell block, you might have a pod, or you might have somebody who has access to a control center that can shut down one wing right away.
Oh, okay.
So that if something jumps off, the whole institution isn't going. It's like lock down that section, close that gate, confine it to this area.
Wow.
So that, and then there's always, information like, because they'll create a scenario that is false, a diversion, in order to get everybody from one side of the institution to the other. So if I want to do something to you over there, then I might create some erroneous false thing way over there first, so that everybody goes over there, so I can do what I need to do over here.
Wow. Man.
So as officers, we have to realize and understand that and be like, okay, if something occurs, we can't just all run over there, because now this area is extremely vulnerable. So you learn that through trial and error, and you learn it over the years from your institution and from the people that have worked before you at other institutions.
Do you feel this danger like every day?
You do, and you don't try to walk around on pins and needles, and you don't go in there nervous and paranoid. But you do have a heightened sense of awareness. You realize when you go through one gate and another gate and another gate, and wire and doors slamming and metal detectors, and once you're inside and that gate slams behind you, you can feel the tension. So you quickly start using your communication skills. All you have is your respect, your communication skills, and then your senses. If your visual sense, you're looking around and you're like, that doesn't look right. That looks weird. All those guys, they don't normally hang out over there like that. That's weird. Or you might hear something, some chatter, or something that just sounds, unusual. Like, what is that? I've never heard that before. You might smell something and you're like, well, that's weird. Someone's either getting high, or I smell booze, or somebody's burning something. Sometimes it's just a sense, and you can feel something. You say, oh, wow, you know what? That's a tattoo gun. Someone's getting a tattoo. So you have a heightened sense of awareness with your senses and your environment, because you're really vulnerable. You don't have a gun. You don't have all these things that people think. You don't walk around with a baton. You don't have all this stuff. This is you, set of keys, your ability to communicate, what the inmates think of you, and your skills at de-escalating situations and understanding what you need to do at that moment and what you shouldn't do at that moment, and trying to make the right decision.
See, I didn't realize that they, I guess it would make sense, that you don't have a gun.
No.
Because, they'd be worried that somebody would rip it off your belt.
Yeah, you don't have a gun, you don't have a baton for many years, you don't have mace, you don't have any of that stuff.
Wow.
If you're in the yard and something occurs, the towers have, AR-15s, and because part of the training is you go through annual refresher training, where for about a week or two, you're going over bureau procedure and policy, but you're also refamiliarizing yourself with the shotgun, with the 9mm, with an AR-15. You're on the firing range. All the stuff that I mentioned that you did at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Facility Center. Once a year, you have to go and you're using paintball. You're using different types of gases and different types of explosives and different types of grenades and different types of smoke, and you're being retrained and refamiliarized every year, so that if you are in the yard and you are without anything, the guy in the tower, if he can stop something with his rifle to minimize your threat, then that's helpful. And you also have what they call a mobile patrol. So you'll have a few vehicles, pickup trucks going around the perimeter with officers with shotguns, and the 6 to 8 towers with full weaponry up there. And all of this is going on the perimeter. But on the inside, if it got really serious, the lieutenant or the captain would have to make a call. Hey, we need to bring the pepper ball. We need to bring some OC gas. We need to do some smoke. We need a disturbance control team to suit up. We need the special operations response team to arrive on the scene. We need, a bigger response than just, a group of us showing up for a de-escalation of something minor.
That's pretty crazy. It never really hit me that, that you don't really carry any weapons. So
No.
you're really exposed.
Very much so.
Wow.
And you could be outnumbered, 200 to 1, depending on where you're at, Basically, if they wanted to do anything to you, if they really did, there's nothing that could stop it from happening. That has occurred. And during my career, there have been fatalities, and there have been officers that have lost their lives. The numbers are few and far between, but it has occurred. There are some, you asked me before, the pros and the cons. Some of the cons would be it's dangerous. It's not for everybody. Things can happen, so.
The times that it had happened, was there involvement on the officer side with the inmates of some, or was it just like, man, I really don't like this person?
As far as an officer being harmed?
Yes.
Well, the Bureau of Prisons a lot of times will have inmates, for many, many years, we had more mental institutions in the United States. There were insane asylums, there were mental institutions, and for whatever reason, through the evolution of politics and whatnot, they felt that it was inhumane and they didn't like what was going on because early on they were doing some, electric shock therapy and lobotomies and some strange things, and they said, no more of this stuff. So a lot of those people end up in prison. They are either criminally insane or they're mentally insane and they've committed crimes that would warrant them going to a facility like that. So to answer your question, you might get someone that just didn't take their medication. We had a thing in the evening called the Thorazine Shuffle, to where on evening watch, the inmates would be called to go to the pill line to receive their Thorazine, Librium, whatever meds they were on, and they were under supervision because they would walk like zombies in robes or whatever they had on in the evening to go get their pill.
Jeez.
And they would be supervised. So if you get someone like that who didn't take their medication, it wouldn't take much for that person to do whatever to you or anybody else. So you have the crazy guy that does it. Then you have the guy that he doesn't like you. You have rubbed him the wrong way. You were maybe a bully as an officer. You've been responsible for him being locked up. Whatever the case may be, they're going to get you because they don't like you. They hate you. You're the reason why their visitation got canceled, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So in those cases, they might have a vendetta. They might have a grudge with you specifically. And they're like, I'm going to get this guy. So that happens.
What does get this guy mean? Like,
it could be an assault. It could be a spontaneous situation too, to where a guy's like, nothing personal. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Actually kind of like you, but you were there. Sorry. It's us against you.
Wow.
There's the crazy guy. There's a vendetta. So I always used to tell the newer officers, don't be afraid of the guy that's 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds. He'll knock you on your butt. You'll get up and you'll be able to talk about it another day. It's the little guy that weighs 140, 145, that's maybe, 5'3", 5'4". He's going to go back to his cell and he's going to go get something. And he's going to wait till you're not looking, and he's going to come up behind you and he's going to stick you with it. Inmates are famous for, you've heard lock in a sock. They'll take combination locks, 2 or 3, or bars of soap. They'll put them like in a big tube sock, and there you go. Or they'll take a toothbrush, melt the end, take the end of a razor, melt the razor into the end of the toothbrush. Now you have a razor on a stick. So depending on how upset they are with you, there were times where we had microwave ovens in the prison. And officers, we sold baby oil. And I had occurrences where they've put, if you can imagine, baby oil into a microwave, get it boiling hot, and then when you're walking by, you get it dumped on your head.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, these things didn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
But things like that could occur. I went through my entire career. I was never assaulted. I was never struck, cut, stabbed, hit. I was fortunate.
Yeah.
And then there's minor things that they do which in real society you would think, well, that's not minor. If you're working special housing, they'll pour urine on you. They'll pour feces on you. You know, they're locked up. Some of them 23 hours a day.
Yeah.
Year after year after year. Anxiety, tension, whatever the reason might be, you know, so these things can occur. But typically, like I said, I made it through my career by the grace of God unscathed. I didn't have any of those problems.
Is that common among corrections officers? Like, or, you know what I mean? Bureau of Prisons officers? Like, is it,
well, again, it depends. Like if you're working at a place like in California, like Pelican Bay, numerically, the ratio of assault to staff, the frequency is quite high. So every institution has a record or documentation of staff assault.
Okay.
So it can vary from if you go to a lockdown institution where they're locked down 24/7 and they can't really get to you, then obviously your risk is going to be a little bit lower because these guys are behind bars. And if you're doing your job correctly, they can't really get to you. It's the ones that have an open yard, open population. So it just depends on the level of severity, where you're at in the country, how many correctional officers are there in relation to inmate, the condition. A lot of times inmates get very upset with the quality of food, visitation, recreation. They're not happy. So if they're not happy, you know, if you can keep the inmate population generally content and busy, you have less of those occurrences taking place.
I kind of want to take a step back real quick because we started to talk about a little bit like the different types of positions because for whatever reason, you know, because I don't know, you know, like I always have it in my head that, you know, a corrections officer, you know, you're walking the inmate all the time or something like that. But there's a lot of other things that are happening that you could potentially be doing. So what could somebody that's interested in this career path, what other options will there be at some point down the road?
Okay. So like I was saying earlier, when you're in a prison environment, you pretty much have to replicate everything that society would have, but on a smaller scale. In order for a population of 2,500 people to function. So with that, you have staff members that represent different roles. And they may have a background where they applied and they're like, well, I did this before. Now I'd like to do it in this setting. And some of those examples, which are actually, you know, opportunities for correctional officers. So we have educators, which would be teachers. You have a legal, vocational training, law library, computer technology. We have general foreman facilities, which you might have maintenance, people that want to get a job working in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, electrical, automotive, plumbing, painting, landscapers.
Super interesting.
Yeah, you have financial people that work in the legal case management, procurement, contract negotiations. You have medical, you might have psychology, psychiatry, x-ray technicians, dentists, hygienists, doctors, nurses, pharmacy. You have reentry social workers, religious staff, chaplains, recreational counseling. Like I said, the safety department dealing with OSHA standards, laundry commissary. Like I said, the records room, mail room, food service is a big area. So when you get into the Bureau of Prisons, you see all these different things. Oh, I want to be a welder. I want to be a plumber. I want to work in the business office. I've got a medical background. You know what? I was a teacher. I want to be a vocational trainer. I'm really good with computers. All the things that take place on the outside are pretty much replicated on the inside. So you can have, like I said, people with legal degrees, people working in financial business, unit management. The food service area is a big area because you figure that these inmates have to have, like I was telling you before, it never closes. They're open 24/7. So they have to have breakfast, lunch, dinner. The laundry is a big issue. They have linen, clothing. So you have what they're wearing, receiving and discharge, inmates coming in, inmates leaving, the mailroom, checking for contraband, things like that. So there's a whole world of different types of jobs that once you get your foot in, you could be like, you know what, I want to be a secretary. I want to be an executive assistant. What would it take to be an associate warden? Maybe I want to stay in corrections and I just want to be a lieutenant. You know what? A captain would be cool. So there's all these different things, and it's not just limited to that facility. So if you are a lieutenant and say you're working here in Tucson, and you're like, man, this captain's going to stay here forever, and we've only got one captain. Oh, you know what? They're opening up a prison in California, and they need a captain.
Oh, wow.
So now you might get the entire Western region lieutenant saying, I'm putting in for that spot.
Wow.
And then some lucky guy will get that job, and he'll be the captain of that facility. So all these different jobs that I mentioned, plumber, dentist, psychologist, it's not just limited to where you're working. You can get on the Bureau of Prison website and say, well, I'm not getting any luck here because those people are there for life and there's never an opening. But you know what? If I go one state over, they just announced an opening. So now I can put in for a job over there. And I can, try to qualify for that. So that's another opportunity that's different in comparison to the state where you're limited to the state of California. Here, if you're like a young single guy and you've got, like yourself, experience with computers, and they're like, you know what? There's a job in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Wow.
I'm a single guy, and they're, they got a job open there. I'm putting in for that spot. That's cool. And you can do it. So that's, one of the, and then if you like, I can go over some of, you had mentioned before some of the pros and cons. I can go over some of the benefits.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. Yeah, let's do that. But first thing is, with the federal system, is it like a retirement system? Like where you get like a pension or something?
Yeah. So basically, like I was mentioning, it's a 3-tier retirement system. So when you're all done, you're going to get a pension, and you're going to get a law enforcement retirement, and you're going to get what they call a supplement, which is an amount of money, a stipend that you get until you're eligible to collect Social Security. So the three parts would be about $1,100 or $1,200, $1,300 stipend, your pension, which comes monthly, and then your 401k contributions. Now, back when I started, the Bureau of Prisons would match you on your 401k thrift savings plan the first 5%. The first 3 were dollar for dollar match on the first 3, 50 cents on the next 2.
Wow.
It's common for a lot of people to end up between $400,000 and $600,000. Some people made $1 million in their 401k.
That's amazing.
So you have your 401k annuity, you have your pension, and then you have your supplement through the Bureau of Prisons. And some of the benefits that they have is they give you veterans preference. They have full health, vision, dental, annual leave, sick leave, like I mentioned, the 401k.
Yeah.
Again, they don't hire you over 37 and they walk you out at 57, but they have life insurance, employee assistance programs, the law enforcement retirement. Now, if you give them 20 years, you can retire at the age of 50. You can walk out of there at the age of 50. Now, if you want to leave at any age, you have to give them 25 years. That's some of the benefit and some of the perk. And then, when I moved around and I transferred to these different facilities that I was mentioning, the government would pay for a lot of the of what it took in order to make that move. So in other words, if you were living in California and you put in for Kentucky like I did, they paid for your airfare.
Oh, wow.
They paid for your lodging or your rental or wherever you needed to stay, your hotel. They paid for all your meals. They paid for your not only your meals and your lodging and your airfare, but if you had to move your family and you hired a moving company to move you, they would pay for that as well. So if you got hired and you got promoted, it was all expenses paid. You're going for, so nothing out of pocket. So you went to Honolulu, say, and got that computer job, and you weren't out anything. You showed up, you have a new job, and the government paid for it all. Wow. So that another one of the perks of working for the Bureau of Prisons.
So when you, like, let's say that you work to 57, like where, they have to send you out because you're at that age where you have to move on. Do you get your pension starting then, or is that where that stipend comes in and it covers it until you're like 65 or something like that?
When you retire, so when you retire, you'll get your pension right away.
Okay.
And you'll get your supplement right away. And what they tell you is we'll remove it at 62 because now you're eligible for Social Security.
Oh, I see.
So what I did was I didn't want to take my Social Security at 62. So I started withdrawing from my 401k in lieu of the supplement.
Okay.
But just to show you how it worked out for me, when I left the Bureau of Prisons, I was probably making about $30 an hour about 7 years ago. It wasn't, anything, world shaking. But after letting time settle, I was actually earning more money, a little bit more money, retired than I was getting working as an active officer working for the Bureau of Prisons.
That's pretty incredible because that's
without touching my 401k.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing because that's kind of unheard of. Usually like any type of like pension or retirement is usually going to be less than what you were making.
And like I'm saying, when they paid for your moves, it was everything, your meals, food, everything. And then when you do retire, I was able to go, like I said, if you give them 20 years, you can leave at 50.
Wow.
I was looking at the monthly annuity projections, so I ended up giving the government 28 years because you get an idea of how much your check is going to be and what your comfort level is and whatnot. But even for me to be able to retire at 55, I still pinch myself every day because, like I said, I'm making more money now, especially with my 401k, than I was ever making while I was working. And I don't have to go anywhere. Every day is a Saturday.
That's pretty amazing that you're making more money now.
I'm making more money now than when I was working. I literally stopped on a Friday and I started making more money by doing nothing. Yeah.
All right. So this is kind of a big deal, because there's I think people need to take the time to consider, hey, it's like, you want to work a job, but where's that job leading to? You know what I mean? And your situation.
And the only reason I was able to go, to answer your question, is because you also get to take your health insurance with you. So I had Blue Cross Blue Shield. So whatever you were contributing as an employee, they say, continue making those contributions and you take that health insurance with you.
Wow. Now,
I have a friend whose wife got laid off, and when she was exploring that around the same time, she was looking at $800-900 a month for health insurance. At the time, I think I was only paying $165, $175 for Blue Cross Blue Shield. So because I had a pension, because I had a supplement, and because they said, take your health insurance, no worries, I didn't have to work. Because my original thought was I was going to go get a job working security at a hospital or something. But your health insurance goes with you as long as you make those same contributions. And it's good health insurance. Well, you can pick whatever you want, Humana. Mine happened to be Blue Cross, but it's Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal. So it's full coverage. And when I become eligible for Medicare, Blue Cross Blue Shield will become my secondary. Medicare will become my primary. And all of my expenses will be paid for in full. So 65 is kind of my next tipping point. That's probably when I'll take Social Security. And that's probably when I am going to take Medicare. And I'll have my 401k and I'll have my pension. So I'm even going to get a more significant raise when that day comes in a couple of years.
Were you thinking about this over the course of your career? Were you planning it out, or did it just happen to be this good?
Well, the Bureau is always giving you opportunities. They have what they call retirement seminars.
Okay.
And you can volunteer to go to those. And that's when they try to educate you when you're at the halfway point, maybe 3/4, and you start hearing people talk about, well, what are you going to do? How much money have you put away? What's your pension going to be like? Because, years ago, pensions were prevalent. Nowadays, not so much.
Yeah.
It could be, you worked in a factory your whole life, the automotive industry, the military, the government, things like that. And what's nice about when I mentioned too with the opportunity of transferring with the Bureau of Prisons is not everybody decided I want to go be a heating, ventilation, and air conditioner in Texas, or I'm going to go be a psychologist at the institution in New York. What it affords you, and what a lot of my coworkers did, is within the Department of Justice, a lot of people can transfer and take everything with them. The DOJ includes the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals.
Oh, wow.
And then you can even go over to Homeland Security. A lot of my coworkers went to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or Immigration and Customs, which is ICE. So you also have the availability to not only transfer within the Bureau of Prisons, but transfer within the Department of Justice.
Oh, I see.
And take your time with you. And if you were in the military, because they do offer veterans preference, you can buy back your military time and apply that towards your retirement.
Wow.
So there's a lot more to it than people realize when it comes to the benefits and the perks. Again, I mentioned some of the danger element, but if you can make it through there, the Bureau of Prisons is funny because their core values were accountability, integrity, respect, compassion, and correctional excellence. If you're fortunate to do your career without incident, you can make it out in a pretty nice situation through planning and preparation.
Sure.
That's why I think for your podcast, Career Insights, that a job working with the Bureau of Prisons, it's not for everybody. Just like I wouldn't want to work in the medical field and be involved with blood. And, it's not, and I say blood, I mean, medical procedures and things like that, applying catheters or changing bedpans. But as an officer, I've seen people stabbed 35, 40 times. I've seen people hanging from a noose. I've seen people that had just been raped or set on fire. So it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
We've had people that got the job and they were like, screw this.
Wow.
This isn't for me. This is off the rails. I ain't doing this. So the turnover rate was pretty high. But if you go with it with a certain mindset, you don't try to be a bully. You understand that the judgment was given by the legal system, the judge. You're not there to, society has its own rules.
Yeah.
Speeding limitations, things that you can and cannot do in society, drugs, whatever the case may be. And in prison, they have their own separate set of rules of do's and don'ts and what's allowed and not allowed. So as an officer, if all you're doing is supervising and navigating and doing the job that you are supposed to do, then you really minimize any danger or risk to yourself, because inmates will talk amongst themselves the same way I mentioned earlier. If you're a new inmate and they're like, who's this Eric character? They'll do that with an officer. They will test you. They will push your buttons. They will talk to other inmates. Where did this guy come from? Oh, yeah, I knew that guy. He used to be a CO over there in Atlanta. Or this guy's a brand new. He's a fish. Or you know what? That dude is a jerk. He's a real a-hole. That guy is no good. Or you know what? Leave that guy alone. That guy's all right. I respect that dude. He doesn't bother nobody. He just does his job. So that's the only thing you can take with you is how you're viewed and how you're perceived. That goes a long way in the course of a day. I've had inmates come up to me and say, hey, you may not want to go out on the yard tonight, or what time are you, what time does your shift end?
Really?
And I said, I get off at 4. Why? I said, oh, good. You probably want to get home then. Okay. Thanks for the heads up, and you can pass that along. But,
dang.
Sometimes inmates will do you a solid, and sometimes there's a relationship that's somewhat interesting, between the inmate and the officer. The Bureau of Prisons has its own rules and regulations, and then you have, like in any job, where they tell you, okay, Eric, this is what we do here. This is policy. This is procedure. Sign here. And then when that is signed in the book, it's pulled away. Someone pulls you aside and says, Eric, okay, look, this is how we really do stuff here. This is how it really goes down. This is how the day-to-day events really occur. And that was something you had asked me earlier, if you want to get into, is some of the day-to-day, what a correctional officer does, how is your day? What do you do in the course of a day? Because at any moment, with great spontaneity, something can occur and your whole day is just turned upside down, whether it happened in your unit or you responded to a situation. Now, whatever you had planned for the day, you're locked down for the next 3 months. Everything has just gone haywire.
What, and this would apply anywhere, I would imagine, but, it's like how you're treating people. So and specifically in this context, inmates and things like that, let's say that you're treating them, regular people, you're not disrespecting them, or they don't feel like they're being judged by you and things like that. And you start to establish like a rapport with the people
That
that
has
you're.
a lot to do with it. Rapport has a lot to do with it.
But I would imagine even in a situation where you're that person and you've established rapport and, you know, they feel you respect them and they respect you to some extent, you still have to be on guard. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier. When you walk in there, and I was talking about using your spidey senses, basically,
okay.
you never become complacent.
Okay.
So you know where you can chill a little bit more. If you have a work detail and you have your regular crew of however many inmates that work for you, and you're in an office or you're someplace more safe, you never really totally let your guard down. You're not walking around, you know, with your head, you know, turning every which way and wondering and nervous. You pretty much never want to become complacent.
Sure.
And you're always aware of your surroundings. And you know that at any moment anything can occur. But there's different places within the course of a day where you can kind of relax a little bit. Say you're working a housing unit and they call your unit and say, release M unit to the chow hall. And now every single person in your unit has just left. They went out the door. 95% of them are gone and they're going to go eat. Well, now you're like, okay, they're all gone. You know, or you're working a housing unit. We conduct counts every 8 hours. So if you're in a housing unit and it's the midnight count and you know that every single person is locked in his bed, you're in your little office, they're all asleep.
Yeah.
They're completely locked down. So there's moments throughout the day where you can be like, okay, everybody is locked down right now. Everyone is behind bars, shut tight. On the flip side of that, you could be working in the dining hall where you've got everybody down there and it's just like, wow, everybody is here. Everybody's eating. Everybody may not be happy. And if the shit hits the fan, you're right in the middle of it.
Wow.
So the dining hall is a place where you're like, okay, I'm looking around and I'm scoping out because, you know, or if you're in the yard and people are playing, you know, softball or they're at the weight pile or they're around the track and your head is like this because everybody's out there compared to when it's lights out, count time, lock them up, you know, or you're working a special housing unit where everyone's pretty much behind the bars all the time anyway. So it kind of depends on the time of day, the events that are occurring, and what's going on around you, you know, when you can kind of, but yeah, your rapport, how they view you, if they respect you, you know, you've been there enough time to where they pretty much have an assessment of what type of person you are.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with it.
So what does a typical day look like?
So as a correctional officer, like I was saying earlier, 24/7, never closes, always open. So you might be doing counts because you might be working 6 to 2, 7 to 4, 4 to midnight, midnight to 8. So depending on your shift, if you're working midnight to 8, well, they're locked up all night. So you're not going to have a whole lot to do other than counting and counting and counting. To whereas during the day, your door is going to be open. You're releasing them to go to work. You're releasing them to go to visitation. You're releasing them to go to the laundry. There's a variety of different things that are occurring. But typically, officers will be doing searches. They'll be doing inspections. They'll come in and inspect your cell.
Is that every day they do that?
Every day, you're expected to search cells. You're expected to pat down inmates. Pull someone out of ICU. I say, hey, you know, Jones, come over here. I'm going to pat you down. I'll pat you down, check around your waist and between your, you know, crotch, armpits, you know, the whole bit. Or I just released you to go eat. I'm going to go into your house because you've been acting squirrely. Your breath smells. I'll go into your cell and I'll strip it down and try to see if I can find contraband.
Okay.
Typically, that could be a tattoo gun, excess food, weapons, narcotics, anything that's been altered or manufactured. So I might go into your cell while you're out, or I might pat you down. So there's counting, there's searching, there's inspections, getting them to feeding, work, and other movements. You got to keep records. There's a lot of documentation that goes on with counts and inmate movement, the keys and the locks, because you're doing incident reports, you're responding to emergencies. Like I said, looking for drugs and weapons. There's restraints that are involved. You might be escorting some people that need to be escorted through with restraints. They might need to be in handcuffs. You might have to be in a position where you're distributing supplies, getting them to the laundry, visitation. You know, inmates need supplies to clean their room. They need supplies to maintain sanitation. They need linen. They have visitation rights. They have legal rights to see their attorney. They have work detail supervisors. They might be on call to go see the psychologist, or they might have to go get their meds. And you have to keep track and document all of this stuff through the course of the day, where everybody under your supervision is going. And like I said, if you're working a special housing unit, then they might need to be escorted via leg restraints or hand restraints. So it kind of depends. If you can't go, if they can't come to you, then you need to go to them.
Wow.
So course of a day, that might be some of your duties if you're a regular officer. If you're a detail supervisor, you might be taking a group of people that are landscapers. You might be mowing lawns or trimming hedges. You might be responding to a unit that has plumbing issues, or going somewhere where there's electrical. If you're working in education, you might be teaching classes all day or giving tests. Inmates will graduate from courses, vocational training. So it kind of depends on what your job is. If it's more administrative, if it's more secretarial, if it's more general foreman type, if you're a regular officer, it kind of depends where your career has taken you, will determine what your day is like, basically. Wow. You know.
So much involved. And, you know, like earlier when you were talking about how it's like everything that exists on the outside world needs to exist in this small confined space.
Right.
You know, barbers and, you know, beauticians and everything.
Yeah, I forgot to mention
commissary.
That too. Yeah, you have people that are cutting hair all day.
Yeah.
People that are getting their teeth cleaned. You know.
It almost sounds like almost any profession you could do in the Bureau of Prisons.
Pretty much, because the only time an inmate will leave is, say, the severity of the injury was so severe that we need to move you to an outside hospital.
Oh, wow.
So now you got to go to Tucson Medical Center because we can't fix what just happened to you here. We're limited. We're not a fully operational hospital. We have x-ray technicians, and we can suture, and we can sew, and we can, you know, if you go under cardiac arrest, you're having a heart attack. You know, there's different things that everything that happens to a person happens behind bars. There's people that have heart attacks. There's people that have strokes. Common irregularity for people to have an overdose. And then you have stabbings, and you have people that are, you know, set on fire. You have people that try killing themselves. There's continuous suicide attempts. So on occasion, we can't take care of those issues. And it's like, okay, we need to send this guy to TMC.
Yeah, that's interesting because I hadn't really thought about it, because the facility needs to be able to handle all that, because they're not just going to be taking people to like the local hospital or
no. We need to
like
do
that.
As much as we possibly can, because it becomes quite dangerous. Because if we have to take you out, now you're going to be in a van with several officers with weapons. There's going to be a lead vehicle in front of you, a chase vehicle behind you. It has to be spontaneous, because to say you planned it, say you planned to get injured really bad, so you can have someone with a cell phone saying, look, I got messed up really bad. They're going to have to take me out. This is an opportunity to break me free.
Yeah.
You can break me free from a mobile transportation more easier than you could from a maximum security penitentiary.
Sure. Yeah.
It's unlikely that that's going to happen, because we have radios, we have cell phones, we have 2-3 vehicles. We can call for backup. You know, we're not going to just let Johnny loose because we're being pursued. But these are some of the things that occur, you know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So almost any career field, you could probably find a position within the Bureau of Prisons if you're interested.
Yeah.
And
it can be replicated to some extent.
Yeah.
You know.
I want to go talk back about the like the political stuff that goes on, you know, within the prisons between like the different gangs and stuff like that, because it's, you know, that's something that, you know, I had realized before, but when you started naming off and you said that was a shorter list, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
seemed so long.
Yeah, it goes on further than that.
That, you know what I mean? Like to have all of those different types of gangs and races and all in one place. I mean, it's just got to be like the potential for chaos has got to be huge.
Well, yeah, because like I said, on one hand, depending on the level of institution, you can get the Aryan Brotherhood and the Bloods and the Crips and the Mexican Mafia, and you can get terrorists, and you can get, or like on the flip side, depending on the level of institution, the Federal Bureau of Prisons will get somebody like Martha Stewart. They'll get Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, James Earl Ray, the guy that killed Martin Luther King, R. Kelly, Bernie Madoff, John Hinckley, the Tiger King, El Chapo. You can get people like that, which are going to pose no threat to you, or you can get somebody that blew up the World Trade Center. You can get somebody that's doing multiple life sentence. So with that type of dynamic, it can be completely racial. It can be, like I said, but in some cases, the whites will associate themselves with the Mexican Mafia if it's on a larger scale. And, depending on what the issue is, it could be an issue that's against the establishment in the Bureau of Prisons, or it can be an issue, a race war, And, talk about some of the danger. We had a guy by the name of Mahmoud Abu Halima. And he was one of the ones that blew up the World Trade Center, the basement of the World Trade, I think in the early 90s, blew up the basement of the World Trade Center. So that guy was incarcerated along with another terrorist by the name of Sekou Odinga. And we had an inmate by the name of Roy Green who got locked up. You were talking before, is it ever personal? Well, we had an officer that apparently packed his property, because when you get an incident report and you go before the disciplinary board and it's determined that you're going to go to special housing, then all your property has to be gathered up and sent with you. You're going to get a very limited amount of that because now you're locked up.
Okay.
Well, we had a guy by the name of Roy Green to where all of his property supposedly was in a duffel bag. And as the story goes, nothing was sealed correctly or appropriately. Some speculate that some of the stuff was even opened up. So this guy's Quran got destroyed.
Oh, wow.
He got out of he finished his sentence in special housing, got released to general population, was approached by the terrorist Mahmoud Halima, Sekou Odinga, other diehard terrorist Muslims, and they convinced him that he was going to have 40 virgins and that he was going to be with Allah, but he needed to take revenge on the staff member who he believed was the one that packed his property and violated his Quran. So he came out, went to his housing unit, and they basically took each hand and put what they call a shank, which is a prison knife, and they wrapped tape and bandages, and they secured the shank to your hand with a closed fist. So no matter how hard you try, I'm not getting that out of your hand because it's wrapped around your palms. And he came down the main corridor, and he ended up coming up behind the officer and basically cutting his throat.
Jeez.
Does that happen, in a gang situation? It can. We had a situation where the Texas Syndicate was fighting with the Guamanians. They entered the unit. It was a gang fight. Officers responded. They basically looked at the responding staff and said, hey, it's nothing to do with you. Stay out of it. We're going to finish what we need to finish.
Wow.
And, had you involved yourself, then you would have been collateral damage.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how the dynamic and the thought process is, it's like, I don't sit with blacks. I don't sit with whites. No, that guy's not part of my car. You could be like Hispanic. Yeah, but we're Mexican Mafia. We're Southern Mexicans. Oh, you're Northerners. We hate you. Same color. Bloods and Crips. We're all black. Yeah, but you're a Blood. I'm a Crip. You're a Northern Mexican. I'm a Southern Mexican. You're a white supremacist. You're a Nazi. I'm not. You're a black guerrilla family. I'm a, gangster. I'm a Black Panther. So not only is it the same race among themselves, or, bikers, like I said, Hells Angels, Mongols, pagans. It can be a variety of different things, or it can be individual,
Is there ever, so like you see in the movies, there'll be like those few people that they're not really with anybody and they're just left alone. Does that happen?
Yeah. See, like again, depending on the facility, because you can try to get in because, just to give you, some of the reason why most of these people that are behind in the Bureau of Prison, it's racketeering, drugs, tax evasion, bank robbery, mail fraud, interstate commerce, white collar crimes, pornography, sex abuse, Native Americans because they live on their reservation. So based on the nature of offense, criminal history, and their health history, that's going to determine what type of inmate we get at our facility. So the lower level, somebody, to answer your question, a guy with a white collar crime can walk in like a Bernie Madoff and be relatively left alone. In comparison, one of the people don't realize, but Alcatraz was part of the Bureau of Prisons. It was from 1934 to 63. So they had people like Al Capone, the Birdman of Alcatraz, Machine Gun Kelly. Shows you how over the years the facility and the inmate has changed. Okay. So if you're at a low level, like a Martha Stewart, you might be like at a women's facility because we also have women that are incarcerated. But the higher you go up, you're going to end up having, the complexion that we talked about, where you're going to have this disparity of way of thinking, racial, geographical, what part of the country, northern, southern, black, white.
Wow.
All of that is going to make a determination on how things evolve.
So you could end up being like incarcerated and never having done that. Let's say you go to like a facility that's more of like let me think about that. So it really would depend on what you're going to prison for, whether or not you're just going to be able to like be left alone or not. Like you could be forced into a situation where you're going to have to pick a side.
Oh, more than likely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So depending on what you did and where you landed, you may not be given a choice. They might approach you and they might say, "You're going to ride with us."
Holy cow.
Or you better lock up.
What does that mean, lock up?
That means you go to the lieutenant, you go to your counselor, and you say, "I can't walk this yard. There's threats on me. I'm not going to, put me in the hole. Do whatever you need to do.
Oh, wow.
If you're not going to put me in the hole, I'll find a reason to put myself in the hole.
Jeez.
I need to be in protective custody. I need to be in segregation. I need to be removed because it's pretty much been told I'm either going to hook up with these people." And you have to ask yourself, if I'm doing a 20, 30-year sentence, do I want to be locked up 23 hours a day in a small little box?
Yeah.
Or am I willing to join this group? But then the expectation is I have to put in work. They're not going to just say, "Hey, Eric, come with us and you can reap from all of our benefits." Mm-hmm. No, they're going to say, "Oh, really? Well, tell you what, we need you to go to visitation and we need to have your girlfriend introduce some drugs and you're going to swallow it, or you're going to put it up your rear end, or you're going to do whatever, and you're going to make sure we get it."
Wow.
Or, see that guy over there? He's a chomo. You get to go do whatever. You can't say no. You can't say, "Nah, no thank you, I'm not interested. Maybe some other day." It's like, no. If they ask you, you're doing it.
Wow.
And that does occur. That does happen. I mean, drugs get introduced. Weapons get introduced. So you don't really have a choice. At a low-level facility, like I said, a medium or a low, you can go in there and be like, "Yeah, just leave me alone." If you go to a segregated facility where everyone's a snitch or a rat or a former cop or somebody that's volunteered information to the government, sexual deviant, whatever, it's like, okay, whatever. Everyone's just pretty much like, "Hey, we're all in the same pot here."
Yeah.
But yeah.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, there's just so much. I can't even, like, what's one of the craziest stories that you have from working there?
Well, I mean, the assaults are pretty intense because the level of thought that goes into it. We had one guy that was associated. So you have people that are actual members. Like in the Japanese akusa, you're tattooed from head to toe, and part of the initiation is you get your pinky cut off.
Oh, wow.
And I had a guy that showed up at the commissary one day, and he was part of the Japanese. His name was Mitsuo Yoshimura, and he was part of the Japanese akusa. And I asked him about it one time, and he said, "Yeah, you get covered from the top of your head to your toe, and really beautiful bright fluorescent colors. But basically, you have to be spoken for. Somebody has to co-sign. There has to be a group of people that say, this guy Eric, he's been running with us for a long time. He's an associate. Just like in the biker world, you're a hanger-on. You're not really a full-fledged Hells Angels. You have to put in time. You're a prospect, they call it.
Yeah.
Well, in most gangs, you're an affiliate, you're an associate. They're feeling you out. They want to see if you're legit, if you're weak, if you're strong, if you're going to break down. So in the Japanese Yakuza, if enough time has passed and you've put in your work and you've done whatever they've asked you to do, and eventually they'll take you before a group of elders, kind of like the Godfathers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And everybody will be wearing a Japanese silk robe, very formal. They'll have sake.
Wow.
Everything is, very fancy, and all the older, members are up front. They'll have someone step and speak on your behalf. I'm introducing you. I'm giving my word. I'm co-signing for you. If you do anything stupid, it's my ass, basically. And you go through this whole process, and then if you get accepted, you're expected to put your hand out, and they cut off your pinky.
Wow.
And I asked him, I said, what happens then? He goes, well, you pretty much got to take the tassel from your robe and wrap it up and just sit there. And because there's other people, you're not the only one. Usually, they don't do it with just one guy. So there's a bunch of you. So you have to wait till it's all done and you just wrap yourself up. And then I said, well, then what happens? He says, well, when they dismiss you, he goes, you get your buddy and you hightail it to somebody that can sew up your nub because, you got a nub there, And so you hear about things like that. And then I remember, working in the commissary, we had a guy that was not part of the Aryan Brotherhood. He was an associate or an affiliate or a hanger-on, as they call it.
Okay.
But they were using him to distribute the methamphetamines.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of based on reputation, too. So if you're running the drugs in an institution and the level of expectation is like, yeah, we're buying it from them. This is some good shit. That's who we're getting our stuff from. You don't want to OD. You don't want it to be weak. You don't want it to be too strong. Well, this guy became a user.
Oh, wow.
So he took it upon himself to cut the ingredient, making it weaker. So obviously the value and the word got out. Hey, the Aryan Brotherhood is putting out bullshit.
Oh, wow.
The shit's been stepped on. It's weak.
Jeez.
You don't want to buy from. So they go back to this guy, and he thought, hey, I'm running with the ABs. I'm untouchable. And they're like, dude, you got to quit using. You got to quit stepping on this shit. We're not going to tell you again. Well, he thought he was too big for his britches, so they had a guy waited for him. He was in his cell, sleeping on his stomach with his head to his side. They had a guy, big boy, must have been 270, 6 foot,
Jeez.
like a little bull. He had what they call a Christmas tree shank, and the reason why I knew it was a Christmas tree shank is I was working, well, I asked later, but I was working the commissary, and I remember looking at the window because there was an officer needs assistance. And like I said before, not everybody responds because sometimes you need to be where you need to be.
Yeah.
I had a work crew and I had inmates in the commissary. I'm not going to just leave them. Hey, gotta go, guys. So I ended up staying back and looking out the window, and I could see a gurney coming out. And there was a sheet over the gurney. The guy was still face down, but it was like a tent, a tent of about, 12 to 14 inches. And that's kind of weird, And I found out later, I talked to the housing unit officer. What had happened was, this guy had run in. I think the inmate's name was Kennedy, was the victim, and Mugridge was the assailant. He was a legitimate AB, and they told him same thing. If they go to you, Eric, and they say, Eric, this guy is stepping on our drugs. We choose you. You got to take care of. You can't say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. They're like, because then you're next. Whatever they asked you to do, if you didn't do it, they're picking someone to do it to you first.
Wow.
No questions asked. So this guy, if you can imagine an arrow, the V arrow, they call it a Christmas tree shank. So basically it's like sheet metal that kind of goes like this.
Oh, man.
So it's like a small arrow, bigger arrow, bigger arrow. So it's all perforated, right? With a handle on it. So it's like an upside down Christmas tree made out of metal, but handheld in a knife form. So this guy ran in and basically jumped on him so that he was straddling him, and the guy was face down, took both his hands and plunged this into his back. So you're not pulling it out.
Yeah. It's,
like in a cowboy and Indian movie, if the arrow went all the way through you, you could snap off the arrow and pull the arrow out, supposedly.
Yeah.
Well, with this type of a shank, serrated metal, upside down Christmas tree. It goes in you, and if it doesn't come out the other side, well, it doesn't really matter. You're not pulling it out. So he, from what I understand, the officer it was a movement. Like I said, they pick and choose their times.
Yeah.
So it was like, say, chow time. So the officer goes to the front door, and he's not looking behind him. This guy decides, I'm not going to chow. I'm sleeping. I'm going to take a nap. I eat commissary. I have top ramen. They knew the guy's history. So inmate goes in there, jumps on him. The officer sees a guy standing up because he looks back on the second tier because this is 3 tiers high. So that's another thing, depending on the institution. You could have the ground level, second level, and the third level. Pretty ominous. This guy was on the second level. The officer said he looked up and he thought that the guy was vomiting. And he got mad. He's like, son of a bitch is up there puking everywhere. What the hell? Because he was over the rail. Well, he wasn't puking. He managed to get to his feet. And he realized later it was blood that was coming out of his mouth. And ironically, in a weird turn of events, the inmate fell over and collapsed on the range, which is the walkway. They called for responding staff. There was an older gentleman that worked, I think, in CMS or facility. I think his name was McGinnis. He ran a long distance and had to go up the stairs and then got there and found that. Well, as luck or bad luck would have it, that officer had a heart attack. There's an older gentleman, and he collapsed. So when a lot of the responding staff got there, they had the inmate with this shank in his back with blood coming out of his mouth, and they had the officer and they were both down. So at first, nobody knew. They had to review the cameras and all that. Nobody really knew, like, what the hell happened here? You got a dead officer and a dead inmate. But because of the way the system works, they were able to charge the inmate with the death of the inmate and to a smaller extent, the subsequent death of the officer, because they believe that through that chain of events, it's kind of like if you commit a bank robbery and 3 people go in and they hold the place up, because this happened in Lompoc also. You go in, you rob the teller, and then on the way out, some idiot decides, bang! And they're like, why'd you shoot him? And you kill him. Okay, so now you've got bank robbery and you've got murder. Well, if you're just a little driver guy, and you're like, come on, let's go, and you take off, well, you're now an accessory because you facilitated their getaway, their arrival, they killed somebody, you're getting that charge because you were the driver. Well, the same thing happened with this inmate. They're like, well, look, had you not went there and killed this guy, this officer would not have had to have responded. He died because of what you did.
Yeah.
You know, and those are just, you know, a few examples of some of the odd things, you know, that occur through a chain of events that are just, you know, highly unorthodox.
Yeah.
You see some unusual things. I remember training on-the-job training 2 young officers. Just starting, like I said, not everyone sticks around. I was in the Cuban unit and making my rounds with these 2 newbies. And sure enough, I go downrange and there's a guy hanging by a noose.
Wow.
And he's bright purple and he's frothing and foaming at the mouth. His eyes are all bugged out. And these 2 new officers are like deer in headlights.
Wow.
So I don't call for assistance. I call for a medical emergency.
Okay.
Because I'm not in any danger. Nobody's being stabbed. I don't need the cavalry, but I need a lot of people to show up that are medically trained.
Yeah.
I found out later this guy was a nutcase Cuban from the Mario Cubanos, and he wanted to go to psychology or medical because they were giving him psych meds that he liked. You know, some of these things make you like a zombie. They make you high. They enjoy these things.
Yeah.
So he basically claimed that he had swallowed a bunch of needles or pins or whatever. And he did a good job. It looked real. I mean, he was purple. He was hanging just enough to where his face was bright purple. And come to find out, he had staged it and he had gargled like with shampoo. So all that stuff coming out of his mouth that was very theatrical was shampoo. And when he brought him back, I'm like, why are you guys bringing him back? And he said, it's all bullshit. He said he faked it. He just wanted his drugs. He wanted to get high. And I said, oh, really? So I went back later. I think his name was Sarafin. And I told him, I said, look, I said, next time I find you like that, I said, I'm going to keep walking by. I said, you better hope that whatever little thing that you did, that you're able to get yourself out of it, because I ain't doing it. And it was all a ruse. It was all a scam. You know, but some of these inmates would do whatever it took to get wherever they wanted.
Yeah.
You know, and some of them were into self-harm. Some of them would harm others. Some would set fires. Some would destroy things. Some would clog up their toilets and flood the entire range. We would have severe flooding. You're dealing with deviants. You're dealing with the criminally and mentally insane. You're dealing with people that are high. You're dealing with people that have overdosed. I've seen people overdose and turn as blue as a Smurf on heroin, and be given Narcan, and be brought back. Like I said, you see people that have been set on fire, people that have been raped. So from a career standpoint, you don't necessarily have to be a correctional officer and be in the thick of all that.
Okay.
You could be at the other end of an institution in the business office where the only thing you see all day are staff members. There are no inmates allowed.
Okay.
There's computers, there's printers, there's fax machines. Everyone is dressed in business attire, and that's what you see all day because you're in the business office.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you can go down to health services and everyone is wearing white doctors' coats, nurses, medical technicians. Everything is clean and sanitary. You're in a different environment. So if you don't want to be a correctional officer, which I only did for like myself, like I said, I was a Unicorn factory foreman. I ran a crew. I worked at the warehouse. I worked at the commissary. I was a counselor because I was like, I don't want to be, I did it for 2-3 years. And I was like, I don't want to do this for the bulk of my career because it's, this is where all the stuff takes place. You're living where the inmates live for the course of your day. That's where you're at.
Boy, that would be tough.
So it is kind of tough. So if you can get out of that and be like, you know what? I want to work in the financial department, or I want to go work in education, and I just want to be a teacher because they're going to show up at such and such time and they're going to sit at their desk and I'm going to teach and show movies, and then they're going to go to lunch and then they're going to come back, and then it's time for them to go back, and then I go home. I'm working 8 to 4 Monday through Friday. So there's a lot of jobs like that where you're around inmates, but you're not in the heart. Now, then again, there's a lot of former military, a lot of young bucks. They like being in that. They want to make their stripes. They want to become a senior officer. They want to become a lieutenant.
Wow.
They want to become a captain. They want to be on the special operations response team. We have special teams, hostage negotiation, crisis management, disturbance control. You can volunteer for a myriad of different things and be collaterally working not only as your primary job, but you can have other duties. You can be a part of the union. The Bureau of Prisons has a union that you can be a part of. So there's so many different things that you can do, within the Bureau. It's like I said, it's a world within a world. So you kind of get a different mindset when you go in there because most of the days, day after day after day, repetitive, everything is, we eat at this time, we count you at this time.
Yeah.
You work at this time, we lock you down at this time, and most of the time, uneventful.
Okay.
Another boring, uneventful day. Nothing occurred. You might go a couple of weeks like that, and then you might have a fight. Joe doesn't like Henry, so you get into a fight. There's times where it might be, something else. Somebody decides they're going to go on a hunger strike.
Yeah.
Or they want to do whatever, so...
Was there ever a situation, if so let's say that like you got somebody that just came in and he, starts rolling with, the Aryan Brotherhood. And let's say that he's, because I'm curious about what you said earlier about how like, if they're like, hey, you're going to have to go take this dude out. Are these people that are like lifers? You know what I mean? Because
a lot of times, see, you have intake and release. So you have what they call R&D, which is release and discharge, but you also have intake. So if a guy comes in and he's coming in and he's been in the system, he's come from another institution, you're going to get stripped and you're going to get interrogated and you're going to get examined. And we're going to mark down all the tattoos. Like, oh, okay, you have Mara Salvatrucha, or you have Clovers, or you have 666. Oh, I see. You've got a black hand. You've got, so this indicates that you're running with this group. And then we could look at your history and see your profile and be like, okay, at 3 other institutions, you ran with the Aryan Brotherhood, or you're a white supremacist. Or I could tell by all the markings on your body, or you're just going to proclaim that yourself, that when you arrive, hey, don't put me over here, man. I can't be on this yard because You know, this is a southern yard, and I'm puro norteño, man. I'm a 14 all the way. I
Yeah.
can't be on this yard. Usually the case management will go through all of that stuff before you arrive. They'll know where you can go and where you can't go. But if you're new and you're going to do a long sentence, yeah, you're not really given you can't just, if you're doing a long sentence, you can't really just say, hey guys, I don't really want to be involved in any of this. So you just, because what's going to happen is, say you're a white guy and you tell the white guys, nah, man, I'm not feeling it. All right, you're on your own, dude. And then what's going to happen is they're going to get approached by the blacks and by the Hispanics, and they're going to be like, hey, what's up with Eric? Fuck that dude. You know, he's not with us, man. Oh, yeah? Yeah, do whatever you want. He's not with us. Then that guy can become a woman. He can be, he can have everything taken from him. He can be used. He can, you can either go to the administration and say, put me in protective custody now, or you can think that you're going to walk the yard. But once you're green lit, what they call it, you're getting the green light, that means you're up for grabs. You're vulnerable.
Wow.
You have no protection. You're one man among many, and no one's going to help you.
And so another reason that I was asking that is because let's say that somebody, let's say that, the shot caller or whatever is like, hey, you're going to have to take this dude out for us and you're going to have to kill this guy. And let's say that you're like, you have hope that you could get out in 20 years. You know what I mean? Like,
a lot of times if a guy's what they call short or what they call close to the house,
okay,
they'll give you a little consideration. If you've been there for a while and you've been a participant and you've done your work, and they know that if you do this, you're probably going to get time. If they can find a way for you to do something to where there's no way, because back in the day, they didn't have all these cameras, they didn't have all the technology, and there was a lot of what they call blind spots. So they could pretty much tell you, look, we're going to have someone stand point. That means an observation. You're going to do this. You're going to get rid of the weapon. Nobody's going to see. Nobody's going to know. You're going to dispose of the weapon. You're going to dispose of your clothing. We're going to wash your hands, because a lot of times when there's an incident, we'll look at people. We'll look at your body. We'll strip you down. We'll look at your knuckles to see if you were in a fight.
Okay.
We'll see if you were cut. We'll see if there's anything that would indicate that you were a participant.
Yeah.
Now there's cameras and there's not a whole lot of blind spots, so it's a lot harder. But they will, if they don't care about you and they're like, you know what? We don't care about Eric. Who cares?
Yeah.
What he gets or what he doesn't get. He's nobody to us.
Okay.
He's either going to do it or we're going to kick his ass.
Yeah.
So it's 50-50. You're either going to flip a coin and do it or not do it, you know?
Wow.
So there's not a lot of love there, let's say,
So looking back, you know what I mean? Like, because you kind of happened upon this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, I happened upon it, like I said, because I was observing a work detail, clean and mop. And then I kind of didn't really, I went to a college for a year and I was really, it wasn't for me. I didn't have an epiphany. It wasn't like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And then as I just put in the time and I realized I could do it, and then I realized, okay, I could probably navigate this and hopefully be okay. And then as you built the tenure, you didn't really want to throw it away, because at the back of your head, it was like, well, if I do this long enough, I'm going to get a pension.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a supplement. I'm going to be able to contribute to my 401k. Not many jobs at 50 or 55, you can just hang it up and say, you know what, I've got enough money. I'm okay.
Not many at all.
I'm doing good. And it's like I said, like every job isn't for everybody. Like not everybody is meant to be a fireman or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Corrections is the same thing. But if you understand that it's not like watching Sons of Anarchy or Orange or one of these prison shows, that there's a wider scope of opportunity. And like I mentioned, you can go to the DEA, the FBI, the Border Patrol. You can go from California to New York to Puerto Rico to Hawaii. You can be an administrator wearing a suit and tie all day and go to work clean and come home clean.
Yeah.
Or you can be a foreman, working on fixing automotive tires and working on engines, and because we have a fleet of vehicles, so they have everything. There's a fleet of vehicles that need to be. So we have, like I said, like we replicate everything. Automotive. There's cars. There's gas. There's fuel. There's You got to have power. You have to have a water treatment facility. You know, you got to have sewage and, you know, all the different things that it takes to maintain a mini subculture to survive.
So there would be a lot of jobs in the Bureau of Prisons that you could do that you would never really come into contact with inmates.
Yes, there are many. Like I said, you know, most of them would be like working in the business office, working in financial, procurement, contracting, administrative, you know, unit management, case management. You're not going to, I mean, you know, depending on the degree of your involvement, there's a lot of jobs where, you know, ultimately they say at the core of everybody, when you go to your training, you're a correctional officer. So they teach you everything you need to know in the event there's a major lockdown or a situation where nobody's going home. And I've been in those situations, whether it be an escape or a major disruption. And the warden basically says, close the front gate. Nobody is going home. Wow. I don't care if you're a teacher, if you're a rabbi, because that's another thing, you know, religious services. We have to have a Catholic, we have to have a deacon, we have to have a priest, we have to have an imam, we have to have a rabbi. You know, there's so many different religions, and we have to have a representative for everyone. They're not going home either. You might need to be able to, you know, and these are few and far between, but if you have to pick up your kids, or if you got, you know, when they say we're locked down, it's understood. Nobody's going home. And if you just worked 4 to 8, you might work 8 to 4 now. On top of the, you know, you'll do 16 hours.
Sure.
And then they'll let you go. And then they'll tell the new shift coming in. You know, I worked in Escape one time where they put me in a tower on 12-hour rotation. And I don't know if you remember the old cartoon of the two sheepdogs where they had the one sheepdog. It was probably before your time, but one would show up and relieve the other one. And be like, morning, Sam, morning, John. And they would relieve one another. Well, it reminded me of that because I'd be up in a tower and I'd be working there for 12 hours. And then the guy that would relieve me, he would be like, hey, morning. I would literally get up from the chair. He would sit down in the chair. I would go home. I would come back. I would relieve him. And we did that for a whole week.
Wow.
12-hour shifts, me and him. I'm relieving you. You're relieving me. I'll see you in the morning. And just a butt in the chair. Anything happen? No. Weapons look okay? Yeah. Anything going on? No. You know, and then you're just stuck up there.
Wow.
So things like that occur too. You know, to where, you know, there's an incident. Because, like I said, you have society's absolute worst who have had a propensity for breaking rules and regulations and going against the grain. So because you put a fence around them with wire and brick, they're not all of a sudden going to be in accordance with everything and be like, oh, well, I'm going to be a good boy now. And I'm going to follow your rules and your regulations. It's like, no, we're going to run drugs. We're going to run loan sharking. We're going to run prostitution. We're going to, you name it, we're going to do it. And we're going to make money. And, you know.
How do you think, if any, did working in this area for just around 30 years, like what type of impact has it had on you?
That's a good question because, and I'll give you an example. So I don't want to use the word judge, but that's a really good question. So being in that environment for so long, you're able to look at somebody, look at their hair, look at their fingernails, look at their clothes, look at their mannerisms, their gesticulations, how they move, their body language, how they're speaking, their posture, just a feeling. And you can get an assessment of that person a lot quicker because you were trained and taught to do that with regularity. It's like when you walk up on me, I have to do a very quick assessment of you. Are you high? Are you drunk? Are you insane? Where are your hands? Are you clean? Are you dirty? Is there something underneath your shirt? Are your eyes red? You know, what's that on your mouth? You're talking kind of weird. Why are you so close to me? So you got to be able to do all of this really quick. So as a result thereof, I'll give you an example. We had a disciplinary hearing officer. Just worked a long shift. You forget where you're at. And he got off work and he went to like a Walmart or a Target and there was a big table like this, like they have sometimes with all kinds of clothes, like at Costco where you've got T-shirts and jackets, and everything's on discount. And one of the salespeople walked up. Oh, excuse me, sir, is there anything I can help you with? He's tired, just worked a shift, and he's like, no, I'm good. I'm all right. Goes around, but by now he's on the other side of the table, and there's other people and stuff. And unbeknownst to that person, that salesperson, went up again. Excuse me, sir, what the fuck did I just tell you? And he was like, oh my God. Because in prison, you speak a lot of times like inmates speak.
Oh, wow.
You talk a lot of times on a level and communicate on a level that they'll understand.
Yeah.
So if you had a work detail and you might tell the guy, hey, thanks, you did a good job for mopping that floor. Or if some guy's an idiot, you're like, man, what the fuck did I just tell you?
Yeah.
Well, he had just came from work. So he was still in the same mind frame, and he hadn't disassociated. And he realized real quickly by the look on the lady's face, like, oh my God, I'm not supposed to talk to you like that. I'm in the public.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to talk to you like a human being, not like the people that I see day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year after year.
Yeah.
We have a different way of speaking, and he felt horrible, and he apologized. And so some of your behavioral traits, you have to know when you come home, okay, I'm with my wife and kids.
Yeah.
Cut down on the profanity. And then there's some funny parts to it. Like one time my daughter had something that I knew she had, and she was hiding it. And I told her, I said, you're messing with the wrong person. I said, get out of your room. I do this for a living. I'm turning your room inside and out and backwards. This is what I do. And I'm finding it, which I did because you're taught to go in and shake down an area.
Sure.
But even like now, when you're in a prison environment, you always have your back to the wall.
Yeah.
And you don't want anything above you that can be dropped on you. And you use your peripheral vision, and you don't want anybody coming up on you. So a lot of times you'll see officers and people with their back to a wall.
Yeah.
So now when I go to a movie theater, I sit in the back row.
Sure.
And I don't want anybody behind me. I'm always in the back row. I pick my tickets. I'm in the back row. I'm going to a movie on Saturday, back row, locked in. I go to a restaurant. I want to know where the entrance is. I want to know where the exit is. And I'm going to position my chair in such way that I know that's the entrance, that's the exit. If I arrive at a park, I'm giving it a perusal. I'm looking all over the place.
Yeah.
If I go in and get groceries at Fry's, when I come out, I'm scanning the parking lot. I'm looking at my vehicle way over there. Is there anybody even roaming around my vehicle? Go to an ATM machine. My eyes are moving before I even pull in.
Yeah.
It's a heightened sense of awareness. It's not to where you're paranoid, but having worked in a prison environment your entire life, you tend to be more aware.
Oh, gosh.
And you tend to be, you're not as trusting. You're more like, I don't know. Let me see what this guy's all about first. Or, you know what, that sounds like when someone rings your doorbell and they're starting a spiel. It's like, you know what, dude? Yeah, I ain't buying that, man. Because you've heard every story. Because all these wise guys and all these characters, they have an excuse for everything. They've done nothing wrong. They're innocent. They lie all day long. So you've heard every story and every trick. And so, yeah, I don't look at it as a negative, because in the world that we're living today with the open borders and with all the things that are occurring, I think it benefits me, because now it puts me in a position to where I'm not, like freaking out, looking around like that. But I'll sit at a restaurant and I'll look around and I'll be like, that guy over there is drunk. Or, or I don't want to park over there because, there's like 12 beer cans sitting right, or this guy that's coming up to me, that wants to, excuse me, sir, but, I'll do a Terminator scan, and I'll look at him real quick. I'm like, okay. And I'll make sure that we have distance, and I'll be like, what do you need? Oh, I was just wondering if you have any spare change. It's like, okay, but I've already scoped you all out, and because, in prison, they teach you how to stand, how to have anticipation, how to respond, how to protect yourself. So there's a little bit of that goes on too. So if you can take some of those and bring them to your personal life, it's not a bad thing. Some think it's kind of weird. Why are you sitting in the back row? Because I'm comfortable in the back row.
When I was a public defender, it was real interesting. Like, I learned a lot about human behavior then.
Yeah, human behavior, yeah.
You learn a lot. And when I was doing that, you just get the sense that people will say anything to get out of jail.
A lot of times.
You know what I mean? They literally will, you know what I mean? It's like you really start to pick up on, when somebody's lying to you, when they're not.
Yeah.
And it was just insane, like when I was doing that, when I was working for the Attorney General's office, I had a lot of interaction with people that were involved in different situations, not criminal, but could potentially be criminal. Yeah. And it was just, you just really do learn a lot about human behavior.
There are anomalies and there are people that do but the recidivism, the return rate, people that find God, that find Jesus, people that, I've turned over a new leaf. It's like, okay, they're few and far between.
Sure.
Because most of the time when you've led a life, you have to think about it. In order to get to a penitentiary, you might have started in a city confinement. You might have jaywalked or shoplifted or done whatever. Then you might have ended up in or even going further back, you might have been in juvenile hall. Juvie. You start off as a delinquent. Yeah. And you start off being a punk, doing punk things. And then you end up in a city jail, and then you continue doing a punk. Now you're 18, and now you're maybe not in a youth authority anymore. Maybe you're in a county jail. Now you've stole a few vehicles, and now you're in a state facility. But now you've crossed state lines, and you've done something that is considered maybe racketeering. So now the feds are going to pick you up. Yeah. So can you do one thing and end up from point A to point B? Yeah, you can be like Bernie Madoff and scam the whole world and go from, here to, pass go and here you go. But 9 times out of 10, you've led a life that has gotten you to that place. Sure. And you're not innocent. You're not an angel. Typically in life, you're expected to mature as you grow older. You're expected to have an ability to control your emotions. There are so many very, very intelligent people in prison. I'm talking judges. I'm talking doctors, lawyers, pilots, people that have multiple master's degrees, PhDs, high level of intelligence, to the point where they think, I'm so smart, I'll never get caught. Wow. Because what they lack is common sense. I firmly believe you can go to school and you can get multiple doctorates and PhDs and so forth. And I think you can give a lecture or a class on what common sense is. You can explain it. I can say to you, well, common sense is, logic and reason and inherent qualities and so forth. But you can teach it and explain it. But in the same way you can get a PhD, I believe that inherently you're very limited on whether or not you have common sense or not. Yeah. And I learned a long time ago, someone said, if you take intelligence and join it with common sense, you get wisdom. The application of both. Yeah. And there's so many people behind bars that are really shrewd, really cunning, ingenious. If they would have just taken their skills and taken them another direction, I know, they could have done so much. But they believe their own BS. They think, I'm so smart and I know the system so good, I ain't getting caught. It's that other guy. And they never know when to get out. But having common sense and having that little, the left angel and the right angel and that little inherent gut feeling that says, yeah, that doesn't sound like something I better do. I don't think I'm going to do that. No, thank you, man. Whatever that is, those people don't have it. Yeah. And they end up in prison. So that's part of the reason why when you talk about, your experiences where you've heard all the lies and all the stories and, this time I'm going to, this time's going to be different. You watch. It's like, okay. And then the next thing you know, you see a familiar face and it's like, didn't you leave here? I got violated. I was driving with Tony and I didn't know it, but he had a gun and he had like a quarter ounce. It's like, well, okay, you were driving with Tony. You're on violation. He's got a gun and you didn't know that he had, cocaine. Okay. Yeah. It wasn't my fault. It was his, Okay. It's all about, I find that a lot of people's problems, having been a counselor in the prison system, is self-awareness and accountability. Yeah. No, people don't want to take accountability for what they've did, or they lack self-awareness. They can't say, I know I'm an idiot. I have a drinking problem, or I shouldn't be gambling, or So So, that's why the first, in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's, hi, my name's Eric. I'm an alcoholic. Okay. Self-awareness. You're taking accountability. Okay. Well, that's a start. Why are you here? Oh, because, my wife. It's like, no, you got to be there because you want to be. You have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's what happens with these people in prison. It's like, how many times are you going to go through through the door here? You may not have that option because you might have been given right off the bat 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And now you're just like, well, I got to do my time. Like the guy that, blew up the World Trade Center. He had no problem encouraging other people to do other things because he'll never get out.
Yeah.
He's doing a multiple life sentence. His life is over.
Yeah.
So you can't give somebody, if you're already serving life, and you know that whatever state or federal system, if they don't currently have the death penalty.
Yeah.
If you're living in that area under that jurisdiction and you've already got 3 death penalty or life sentences, say you have 3 life sentences and well, if I go kill that guy, they can't do anything to me because they don't have the death penalty here.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do? They're going to give me life number 4. I literally have seen guys with 400 or 500 year life sentences. And it was always funny because they would have supervised release. And it was like, okay, how are you going to do 4, not concurrent, but 4 consecutive life sentences and then be under supervised release? It's almost like they did that just to piss you off.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when you're done with your 400 years, you've got supervised release. You're under probation when you get out. It's like, well, you're never getting out.
Yeah, totally.
So a lot of that goes on. So it's been an interesting career. It's been an interesting, but you know what? I can tell you, I am extremely grateful. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude and appreciation, and I'm so thankful that I chose that, that I fell into that career because it allowed me to have my pension, my federal supplement, my 401k contributions, my health insurance. I was able to walk away at 55. I could have went at 50. And, when you're working, you look forward to Saturday and Sunday. When you're retired, you look forward to Monday through Friday because you can go to Costco and nobody's there. You can make that doctor's appointment. You can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate and I feel very blessed. Now, not everybody makes it out equally.
Yeah.
But I would say the majority of people choose their career, have a head on their shoulders, make good decisions. And it's like I always tell everybody, the choices and the decisions you make have consequences.
Yeah.
And so you can do nothing in life and things will typically get worse. Say you have a roof that's leaking and you choose to do nothing. Well, it's going to get worse. If you have a cavity and you're like, I'm not going to do nothing, it's going to get worse. So 9 times out of 10, when you choose to do nothing, it usually gets worse. If you make a stupid decision or make a poor choice, it's going to get worse because you've made a dumb decision. Oh, that was stupid. The only time in life where things improve and get better is when you've made a good decision that's well thought out and you've made a good choice, and now you can bear the fruits of that and be like, wow, this is great. I made a good decision. I made a good choice, and now good things are happening as a result thereof.
Yeah.
Now there's fate and there's destiny and there's the unknown, which you have no control over, but a lot of these people who ended up not only working for the Bureau of Prisons or the people that ended up behind the bars of the prison system, they made choices. They made decisions. They navigated a pathway that brought them to where they ended up. And that's how you ended up there. So like in your podcast, Career Insights, whatever choice you make, you have to look in the present and you have to look in the future and you have to ask yourself, where am I going to be today, tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How do I want to end up? Where do I want to end up?
Sure.
And then you have to ask yourself, am I willing to change my mind and do something different, midway? Because that's how these people end up, whatever their choice is, which is why your podcast is valuable, because what you do is you give people a little window to, somebody might watch one and go, hey, you know what? That's really interesting. That's cool. That sounds like I could do that. To where somebody else would be like, that's not for me. I definitely don't. I thought I would like that. But after listening to that podcast, maybe I don't want to do that.
Sure.
Maybe I'd rather go this direction, and do something different. because not everybody is. It's like you said before. You'll watch a television show and you wonder, like, oh, is that what it's like? Like that. There was a TV show many years ago. I can't think of the actor's name, but he was a helicopter pilot, and it was put on a Hollywood scale, and it was glamorized. So people think, well, is that what it's like? Or if you watch, if you watch Sons of Anarchy,
sure.
Well, is that what it's like to be in a biker gang?
Yeah.
That's cool. Is that what prison's like? Shoot. But you really don't know. Unless you know somebody.
Totally.
Who's done that job, or you've done a little bit of a deeper dive into what that might be. Because like myself, I told you I did a year in college, and all I knew was I didn't like college.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, well, I guess I'll go work at a lumberyard and drive a forklift for a while till I figure this out. And then I just kind of fell into something. And by the grace of God, here I am, years later, having been retired, 7 years, 3 months. And kind of fortunate how it turned out for me, Other people, sometimes life makes decisions for you. Depending on what occurs. It's very... you have to live in the present because life does go by very quickly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like I said, I started when I was 27.
Mm-hmm.
In June, I'll be 63.
Wow.
So it goes by quick. So how you want to end up and the quality of life you want to have greatly depends on your preparation and your planning that you did to get you there. So many young people in their 20s, they're like, retirement, Social Security, pension. I ain't worried about that. I'm 24.
Mm-hmm.
But you really do need to think about those things. Because everything compounds, and preparing now is what gives you that, the end result.
Well, I think this is a good place to cut it off, man. This has been really good, man. There's so many things that I had no clue about.
It's different.
I really appreciate you coming here.
Absolutely.
And taking the time and just giving all this information, man, is really cool to hear all the stories and just all the little things that you just would never know.
And hopefully people have seen this podcast and they'll go and see some of your others. And
thanks.
Like they say, share it, subscribe, like
Please.
it, glance at a few others, do some comparison, and tell a friend.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
no, and everybody, if you're watching right now, what did you think of this episode? I know I learned a lot. There aren't too many career fields that I'm aware of where you could leave that after a certain amount of time and then get your pension. Mike's on cruise control now. You've been on cruise control for quite some time. So if that's something that you are wanting, and that's the other thing too, is I didn't really realize is that, the Bureau of Prisons will have a lot of opportunities outside of the actual corrections officer where you're in the middle of population and things like that. You could be a mechanic, or you could be a teacher, you could be a dentist, you could be a barber. There's so many opportunities. And let's say barber, for instance, it's a great profession, but if you're doing it at a local shop, that might not, unless you're already investing for yourself, in a 401k, there's really no retirement plan for that. However, if you did that in the Bureau of Prisons, you could end up with a pension at the very end. So a lot of things to consider. If you have any questions for Mike, let me know. I'll ask him, and then I will respond in a comment. So put your question in a comment.
And again, go to bop.gov.
bop.gov.
And that will be the official website for further information.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely.
And
thank you.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, man, that was cool.